Okay, so now that I have a game plan going forward, I threw this into my pure ref over here, so I have that along with my other reference, so I can kind of view that as I need to. I think the next thing I'm going to tackle is the walkway or the pathway. And even though I have it sort of twisting and winding down here, I think I'm also going to do a little pathway around to the side, like through these rocks right here. Um, so yeah, that's what we're going to tackle now. Now, I have a few pavers that I'm already made, so we can kind of get an idea of what those are if we look at them here. So just very simple geometry. I just made some very simple paver-like objects, and that's what we're going to be using to sort of put down our pathway here. Now, I obviously don't want my pathway, my pavers to be on the entire piece of geometry. And I could use the placer like we did with the rocks to kind of just place them in a specific area. But I believe I want to get even more specific than that, and I want to have them follow a very specific pathway. So I think the best course of action for that is to make a piece of geometry, a new piece of geometry that's not going to be seen in the final scene, but something that I can just attach my pavers to follow that path. So to do that, I'm going to use my existing ground that I have here, and I'm going to make that ground live. So to make an object live, we're just going to click on this and then come up here to this little magnet right here, all the way to the right where it says no live surface. Click that. And now my ground is live. Now what this will allow me to do is to draw right on top of the ground. So what I'm going to be using here is called the Create Polygon tool. So I'm going to go up to Mesh Tools, Create Polygon tool. And now I can actually draw polygons right on the ground. Let me see. There we go. So now I can start drawing in this little pathway. Right along the ground. Now I do want to sort of make sure that there's the same amount of sides. So something like that. And then I'm going to grab my multi-cut tool here and just sort of join up these sides. Oops. And I'm just going to use my G key. If it doesn't have the same amount of sides, it's very easy just to kind of add this. But I want this to be all quads. I want it to be good, straightforward geometry. And then I can probably come in again with my multi-cut tool and add a few divisions in here. Because I do want this to sort of flow with the geometry itself. And then what we can do is actually I want to go into my my quad draw tool, or my modeling toolkit. So with that object selected, I'm going to come up here to this little icon right here that's like a Rubik's Cube with a hammer, and that's going to take me into my modeling toolkit. And we're using the quad draw tool. So I used the Create Polygon tool. You can also just come in, make your surface live, and use this quad draw tool as well. And then what we can do here is sort of just update this and move this around. If we hold down Shift, it will just relax all of those, so they'll snap to the surface. And if I want to move them around, I can move them around like that. I don't think I want them to go this far down. Actually, we'll kind of leave it. I think that's pretty steep realistically, but it might look good. So I'm just going to leave it for now. And then I also want my path to sort of curve around to go back towards where my garden might be. So with this multi-cut or quad draw tool, what you can do is just click and add points. And then if I hold down shift, I will add a surface in between them. So a really cool way to add geometry to a surface. And yeah, so I think I want this point here to look kind of round. Give you a sort of place to stand around, and then this can be a little bit more thin. Right, maybe add one more point and just hold down shift to relax all of those. And if I want to delete something, like if I think that maybe this is going too far down, I can hold down Control and Shift, and then I can just delete edges like that. Like that's obviously a little bit too far up. So this quad draw tool is fantastic for a lot of different things. This is just one little example of how you can use it, but it's also great for, say you're modeling something and you just want to completely you like the shape and form of it, but you don't like the topology or the edge flow. You can basically totally recreate your model with new topology using this quad draw tool. Very cool. And if you're ever curious about using it, if you come down here to the keyboard, mouse, and shortcuts, it will show you all the different keyboard shortcuts for that quad draw tool. All right, so when we're done with this, I have my little pattern there. I'm going to hit W to exit out of that. And I'm going to select that object that I have here. It's going to be way down in my outliner. And I'm just going to name this paver path. And then let's go ahead and move this to where it's not quite so much in the way with our outliner. So we'll move it to this little bottom corner. All right, now, like I said, we're not going to see this. This is just for sort of placing those pavers down. So we're eventually going to hide it. But for now, that's a great way to very specifically direct the path of things that you want to create with Mesh. So now we're going to do that. We're going to create our little pavers here with Mesh. So I already have my pavers created. So I'm just going to select paver 1, create my Mesh network. And I'm going to go ahead and name this Mesh 3 paver. We're going to delete this eventually, but it'll just help me sort of keep organized for now. We're going to go to our attribute editor. As usual, we're going to go to distribute. We're going to change our distribution type to mesh, and we're going to choose our paver path as our mesh. And we can already see that we're getting pavers placed on there. So then I want to create an ID node. And we have 4 different pavers. So I'm going to create that and then go to my repro node and middle mouse drag my other pavers in. All right, so then I want to make sure that my ID is set to random. So I get those random pavers on there. And then I also want a random node. So it changes up their size a little bit. Don't want to change random position. I want to make sure my transformation space is set to local. And then my Y rotation will go all the way up so they can kind of rotate all over the place. And then I can do random uniform scale. And then it's just a matter of tweaking the settings. So going into distribution type. And I will most likely need to come in here and clean this up quite a bit. So I'm keeping that in mind for sure. And you'll see that this is distributed a lot more here because this has more geometry basically. So we could, I could say like use face area. So that will kind of spread them out a little bit more. Let's do 200. So again, I want to, I will have to sort of edit this and delete a lot of these that are overlapping because I don't really want them to be overlapping or move some of them around. But I want to initially have enough of them to where it covers that sort of pathway there. And let's see, we can change our random settings a tad. You don't want them too big, obviously. And we can mess with the X and Z rotation a tad to give them a little bit more of a offset look. We just want to be careful with that because they will tend to pop out of the geometry a little bit when we play with those settings too much. And if you do notice that they're kind of floating, we can fix this with a offset node. So we can fix this just by moving your original piece around, but we can also fix this with just a offset node. So create a offset. There we go, add offset. And then I can just offset the position Y. So we'll start to do a negative low value like negative 0.01, negative 1. And then that will start to lower them down a little bit. Let's try negative 2. Negative 3. It's basically going to be easier to rise up the ones that we want than it is to lower each and every one. So I think negative 2 is probably the value that I want here. Negative 2. Then we can try, just tweaking the settings until we basically have something that we're somewhat happy with here. Can also try a different seed. I think I want them to be slightly bigger, some of them slightly bigger than other ones, but I think I'm going to do that as I just sort of tweak them all. So I will do a time lapse of me just kind of going through and rearranging them all, getting them to look a little bit nicer. I'll be scaling them, moving them, deleting them, just sort of get this looking a little bit nicer. So to do that, just like we've done with everything else that we've sort of gotten rid of at this point, I'm going to just delete the history on that repro mesh. So we'll delete the history on that, and then I can delete that the original paver path. I'm going to hide my pavers that I created. I'll go ahead and hide the paver path as well. And then for these guys, we want to separate them all out into a their own individual mesh. So, or meshes. So we're just going to go to mesh, separate, and that will bring them all to a group. However, all their pivot points are going to be in the origin as usual. So I want to select them all. It's a lot of them. And I want to center all of their pivot points. And now I'll go about just adjusting them individually.